Right, Joe Calabrese, huh? And I'm working with Jim Oberstar on that legislation, and it's going to present a real challenge, folks. First of all, as Jolene's probably shaking in her boots, she knows that we need, what, $10 billion right now in order for you to just continue our commitment to you under Safety Lou. And so we're going to have to find that money, and I think at the White House they talked about it, and we're going to get you that money. But the next issue is that most of you know that this is the Department of Transportation statistics, that we need, in order to maintain the current condition and performance of our highway system, it's going to take $78.8 billion, and the cost to improve our highways and bridges would be $131.7 billion. In other words, it's $200 billion a year is what we're going to need if we're going to get the job done. And the last highway bill was about $285 billion for 5 years. Do you hear that? 285. And when we passed that bill, I told my colleagues, you know what? We're going to fall behind because inflation is going to eat up this money during this next 5-year period. And any of you that have had anything to do with building highways, you know that the cost of steel and the cost of oil have really reduced that money that was available. And a lot of projects in Ohio that the governor and our track proposal was supposed to get done, they just haven't got done. And what we want to do is to get this bill passed this year. But I want you to know this. It's going to be a comprehensive, and if in the question and answer you want to ask about some of the details on, I'll be glad to share them with you. But it's going to take about $500 million to just do a halfway decent job. And the interesting thing is that all of the groups, including the truckers, have now said that they will support a gas tax. Last time around, a lot of them took a walk on us, but they all said, we realize how vulnerable we are today in this country, and we're going to have to get the money to get the job done. And I've said over and over again, I know none of you want to hear me, but if we're going to do the job that we need to do and taking on the challenge of our infrastructure, our roads and bridges and service transportation, we're going to have the money. And we sure as heck can't borrow the money, and we're going to have to increase the gas tax. That's the beginning. Now we're thinking about other things that might be available, looking at tolling and looking at infrastructure bonds and a lot of other alternatives. But the bottom line at this stage of the game, and what's the other one? You got it. Yeah, but the technology to do that's just not there, and this will be part of it. You know, we're going to try and go to some other system because we know that as we go on, we're encouraging more and more people not to use gasoline, right? And so as a result of that, we're going to see less and less of this money coming in, and we got to figure another way to take care of dealing with our transportation problems. So that we're wrestling with that right now, and I'm really pleased that instead of just trying to do it the old way, we're looking at some new ideas in terms of projects of regional significance. For example, these bridges, like over Interstate 90. This ought not just to be for us to take care of. This is on the interstate system, okay? This should be a project that the government, and that's why I got the money above the line. I said, this is a project of national significance, and we need this money above the line. We have the Brent Spence Bridge. Who heard of the Brent Spence Bridge? Down in Cincinnati. And that's going to be a very, very expensive project. But again, that's the second most used bridge in the interstate highway system. And again, that's something that we, all of us, should pay for. So we're talking about reducing the number of programs that we have, making it more understandable. Quite frankly, your 30-30 plan about, looking down the road and planning is really important, because what we're going to say to communities in this legislation is you got to come back to us and tell us what you want to do, what's the 6-year plan, how are you going to get it done, so that, and so we have some performance standards that are there to make sure that we're really getting the stuff done that needs to be done. And I think Ohio is going to be ahead of the game because we've got the track proposal. You know, when I became governor of Ohio, we had $26 billion worth of projects. I said to what is this? You know, Celeste promised them, you know, Rhodes, Jim, my buddy Rhodes, I was his lieutenant governor. Anybody remember I was lieutenant governor of Ohio? You know, I left. They never replaced me. And old Jim Rhodes, he never learned how to pronounce my last name. He kept calling me Voinovich, and I know when he called me to be lieutenant governor, he said, Voinovich. I said, no, it's Voinovich. He says, no, it's Voinovich. They'll think it's German down in Cincinnati. But anyhow, so I said to our gang, I said, we just can't do this. And so we decided that we'd have the transportation resource allocation, and we started out Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. We convinced a lot of our congressmen that were earmarking projects that everybody wanted in their community that weren't going to be built, that for God's sakes, if you're going to earmark it something on the track so at least you'll be there with when they break ground for it. But, you know, we had $600 million, I think, that wasn't being spent because congressmen had allocated resources to some project that had been around for 25 years, and they were afraid to take it off the list because somebody would get mad at them. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to try and do on the federal level, is to kind of have an internet or national track proposal. The last thing that I want to talk about is the issue of infrastructure in terms of our sewers and water. Okay, that's something that I'm sure all of you are very concerned about. We have 100 communities today in Ohio that are under the gun from the Environmental Protection Agency. And for years I have argued that we need more money in the state revolving loan fund, that we need to have a grant program. I don't know if you know this or not, but well, you don't know this, but my first bill in the legislature in 1967 was a $375 million bond issue to start to move cities to what we call tertiary treatment. There were many of them that were primary and secondary. And it was about that time that the federal government got involved. We created the Environmental Protection Agency. Bill Ruckelshaus was its first head. And the country decided that we had to really do something about sewers. So we came up with a program, 75-25, 75% government, federal government, 25 locally. And that's when we really got a lot of stuff done, really. That's when we went to tertiary treatment. And that's been a long time ago. A lot of this stuff's breaking down, and we've got a lot of things to do. And what's happened is this, folks, with the economy as it is today, people can't handle it. I mean, I've talked to Julius Chach. 12% a year? Are you aware of that? Yeah, it's what, 12% a year for the next 4 years, and then after that it may be more than that. People can't afford it. And I've told the president's people, I said, something's got to be done about this. And Sherrod Brown and I have put a piece of legislation in that causes the EPA to start looking at the affordability standards that they've been using, which are outdated. I mean, you take a little town over in, what was it, Defiance, Ohio. They lost the GM plant. Their rates are going, and you know, the plant was going to pay for a lot of the cost of the sewer rate because they were going to big industry there, and about a third of the people who work for it now are gone. Okay, their rates are going to go up 150%, and so we have to make some sense out of this. And I've said either slow it down. I mean, yeah, they're unreasonable. Akron came and the Ohio EPA approved. They wanted to take 30 years to do what they wanted them to do. No, got to be 20. So I'm working with Lisa Jackson, the new head of the EPA, and I said, in fact, I just signed a letter to the president this week, trying to get him involved. I said, you know, you really care about the American people. They're up against it today. People are already in my area in terms of utility bills and even our natural gas costs and so forth. I said, they're not going to be able, you're going to have more delinquencies than you've ever had before. So there's got to be some consideration to this. Maybe a moratorium or slowing it down or giving us more time to take care of it. But it's a very, very significant problem. And I know people in Washington don't get it, but as a local government official, I know people, those rates are like tax increases. They really are. And so that's another legacy thing that we're trying to work on.